With that, again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Village of Bartlett Committee meeting for May 6, 2014. I call this meeting to order and ask the clerk please call the roll.
Trustee Ahrens, absent. Hammer.
Here.
Carbonaro.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Ranke.
Here.
Shipman.
Here.
President Wallace.
Present. First item on the Committee of the Whole meeting for this evening is under the Planning and Zoning Committee. Chairman Kammerer.
Thank you, President Wallace. In its recommendations to improve the downtown area of the Village Economic Development Commission, the EDC listed amending the village sign code to allow for more business signage. The EDC was responding to the perception that the village regulations and shopping centers are too restrictive. Staff discussion on this issue identified the fact that the Unified Business Center sign plans established by the shopping center owner and approved and enforced by the village is a main issue and should be the primary focus of the proposed amendments. That being said, I think I'd like to turn this over to staff now and let them run through these proposed amendments to the sign code.
Thank you, Trustee Kammerer. I have put up the 5 items that we are proposing to amend that are particularly germane to the business community and what we believe as a staff will be most beneficial to them in terms of improving the signage, the quicker ability to get sign permits and those types of things. The first one is the Unified Business Center sign plan. This is not much of a slide, but the Unified Business Center sign plan, and this particular one is for Far Hill Shops, is both a narrative description of the sign plan as well as items that are required for the business facades for the shopping center. And long story short, this is a lot of criteria of what the tenants can and cannot do in terms of signage in this particular center. They are common for any of our business areas that have 4 or more businesses, and the bulk of our shopping centers all have Unified Business Center sign plans. Just an example of what it covers: the primary frontage sign, which is what you see as you approach the tenant space with the sign above the door. There's a service store sign typically required, and then the ground sign with all the tenant panels. What we are proposing to do is that these sign plans, the control is with the shopping center owner. What we're proposing to do, and you've seen an example of it, is when they want to change it, rather than going through Plan Commission and approving it in terms of a vote and public hearing, that we can amend these administratively. The one that we brought to you recently, it was a color change, and so and a sign size change. So that's what we're proposing in our text amendments, that it can be done administratively. So that's one item. Item number 2, just simply allowing A-frame signs. This is something that the EDC recommended. We're going to get those for our downtown events, but we would allow businesses throughout the community have these A-frame or sidewalk signs. And we put a 24 by 48 inch limit on there. That's pretty standard in the industry. We've dealt with a couple of the sign companies that make these. Window signage, one of the things that we are proposing is to increase it to 25% of the window space. Currently it's at 20, and currently the sign ordinance requires that the window signage is calculated in the overall signage allowed for the tenant space. So it actually takes away from the wall sign that they can have. We're proposing to eliminate that and to just increase the signage space in the window sign to 25%. This is an example of just window signage that we have in one of our tenant spaces. And so it'll allow the tenants to have a little more leeway, and it won't count towards their overall signage that's above the facade, which is in many cases is part of their Unified Center sign plan. Reader boards and electronic changeable message centers, we're going to increase the maximum size to 32 square feet for the reader boards and allow for color digital signage. Sonic is the best example we have that has one. This particular reader board is 20 square feet. We'd allow it to go to 32 square feet, or which is a sheet of plywood or a piece of drywall. That's generally the size of it. You will see a variance coming your way very soon. The Park District did not want to wait for us to amend it, but in their Villa Olivia sign, they asked for a variance to go to this size for their reader board on Route 20. So that'll be coming your way. We just had the public hearing on that in front of the zoning board, and that was recommended approval by the zoning board. So it's something that we wanted to do for a while, and that's one of the changes. We also are going to increase the rate of change for 30 seconds. It requires that they be not flashing. Flashing signs are still a nuisance, but that they have the message, it stays up there for at least 30 seconds and then changes. And we have some of them in town that you've seen, the Park District, Sonics, some of the other ones. And then the last one that we were proposing, well, this is Bartlett Hills, actually. I show their sign up there. So the last one we are proposing is multiple frontage. We're allowing for a 1-to-1 ratio of multiple frontage for and which is currently at it's 50% on one of the frontages. And this is a very technical way of looking at it, but this is a Hallmark, which unfortunately is not there anymore, but they had a double frontage sign, and we would allow a 1-to-1 ratio rather than 50%. Right now, you only get 1-to-1 ratio on one frontage, and you make your choice, and the other one is half. So in this particular elevation, if we were to allow 1-to-1, the sign would be a little larger and allow to go, this is their whole space. So they'd have a bigger frontage, and they'd have two signs that would basically be a bit more visible. So those are the 5 changes that we are proposing. Those particularly are the ones that businesses deal with regularly, and we feel is most beneficial for them. If you want us to change other things in the sign ordinance, we are only proposing really the business type signage. We're sticking to that because it's based from the EDC recommendation and following through on yours. We can get to some of the other things later, but right now our sign code, we've amended it over the years. I don't think there's really much. I know our village attorney will talk and make sure we have our political signs, and our freedom of speech language. He'll make sure that's all correct, but I don't think we have problems with that. But that's what we're proposing. If you give us direction, we will draft the actual text amendments for these sign changes. There's some definitions that needed to be added, some obviously language change, and then we will have to go through the text amendment process, which goes in front of the Zoning Board of Appeal, and it'll come back to you before it's finalized.
Thank you. Is there any questions of staff by the board?
Just if Hallmark was still there and they own the other corner, they could do a larger sign on the one. Can they do just as large on the other side too now?
That's basically what it does. It would allow the same size signage on each frontage at a 1-to-1 ratio, 2 larger signs.
Okay.
Jim, are you, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you planning on limiting the amount of A-frame or sandwich boards that any individual business can have?
We didn't put a number on it. Usually they only have one, but that's a good point. We probably should say 1 sandwich board per business.
One, or
Well,
tie it to something somehow, I guess, maybe.
Usually, I think in the definition we were banding about, we wanted to tie it to like a daily special or something that they would have, not just throw out a sandwich board, but we could limit it to 1, and, usually there's some type of event or sale or something like that, but we can play around with that. It doesn't have to be tied to that. A lot of people just like to advertise their lunch specials out there, but
I guess, yeah, just at first blush, and I'd be interested to see what the other committees have to say on this too, see how they weigh in.
Okay.
But I'm okay with, I guess, a business using it each day. I just don't want to have a business put 15 of them out.
Right. That's a good point. We did stipulate that it can't be a traffic vision problem, or can't be in the vision clearance or interfere with walking on public sidewalks, that type of thing. So, but one sign per business is a good.
What if they're on a corner?
Jim? Oh, go on.
We,
What if they're on the corner?
if you could have a corner, you could have.
The Mexican restaurant on the corner.
We could say one side per business frontage, if you would like.
I mean, you just allowed 2 now, so I mean, whatever gets them noticed, but then again, we don't want it cluttered.
Right. That's one of the drawbacks of having, too many, is that they'll be right there.
Pasta Mia has a space for 2, 1 on each sidewalk.
And
Therein lies your challenge.
Right.
I would
We'll
say
come
maybe
up with
not more than
something.
2 if you're on a corner.
I think the business also is a bit self-controlled, because if they get too many out there, the businesses are going to say, we can't have that many, people don't like it. But I agree, there's got to be some kind of verbiage.
Yeah. We'll come up with something on that.
1 sign per 2 if you're on a corner.
Okay.
Jim?
And if somebody's wearing one of them, that doesn't count, so.
But they can't walk faster than you
Yeah,
can
they
read
can't.
for 30 seconds or what?
Or in traffic.
Yeah, well, we haven't crossed that one yet, so.
My question, Jim, was under the reader board signs. Oftentimes in storefronts, you'll see the little digital display that runs a topic or
Right.
a promotion across, hanging from a window in front. Is that affected by this ordinance change in
So
some way?
right now, those are illegal. They're not allowed by our ordinance, and we weren't proposing a change on that. Those tend to be like a flashing type of sign. If you want to allow that, we'll have to add another change to that. But we were talking particularly about this type of sign, where it's actually on. It's a panel. It's on the main sign, the ground sign, if you will, of the business. Not those like runner ones that are in the.
Only around Christmas time we'll allow those.
But there are several businesses that do have them and are using them. I know that. Not
Inside
that
the bank.
I was going to say, it seems more of an inside thing from ones I've seen, not so much.
They'll hang and then they'll face out, but they won't be attached to the window or anything. But they will. You can certainly see them from the
Somebody's
outside.
going to rat somebody out here.
I'm
That
not.
might be a
I'm-
fine line.
They're probably.
I guess there's another
It's on that
Correct.
wall. Hey, not the,
They're
Actually,
probably
the
window's
skirting our
just
window
open.
sign criteria, and they're probably back far enough that they don't qualify as a window sign. That window signs are within 12 inches of the window, so if they have them back and they're shining through, they're probably getting around it. But those are not allowed per our sign ordinance.
So, and the reason they're not allowed is what, aesthetics?
They're
or-
flashing signs, and
But they don't have to be flashing, right? They can just be a moving sign. Is that still
the
considered
way the
flashing?
ordinance reads, those would be considered flashing because it's constant movement and that, and we don't allow any of those types of signs in any application.
But in theory, if the sign was able to be stationary, which I think it can be controlled by computer, someone could have that, it would still fall under that reader board signs or not?
No, I think it would fall more like the window signage that we have. And then we would if they wanted to do that, our window signage is a static kind of sign. If we wanted to add those, we'd have to allow the window signage to have those types of movable signs in the window. If you wanted to do that, we could do that.
Well, I don't have anybody coming to me and saying,
Right.
oh, I really want to have these signs. It occurred to me as we're going through this, so I'm not going to, stand up and try to have something changed on.
We could take a look at it and see, I'm not aware of the ones you're talking about. I mean, I see those open signs where it spells out the word open, and we don't count those, but where they're running a message, that's right now not allowed per the ordinance.
Okay.
do we have any ordinance against the sign spinners standing out? I've seen them in other towns and haven't seen them here luckily.
We don't allow them.
Liberty
The
tax
guys
person?
that are dressed like
Yeah,
Godzilla.
you see that on across from where the Dunkin's going to be.
Those would not be allowed.
Let's move
Now,
on.
we allow if they put that type of sign, going out of business sign, on, just stick it in the ground, we allow it for a time frame.
I'm talking more either the people
Guy.
in costume or
Yeah.
they're pizza.
We don't allow them. We haven't had too many, and I'd turn that over to the police.
Some hoodlums out here with a sign.
He's dressed as a banana.
Right.
I guess I would just address the staff, and I'm sure that you've looked at all of these carefully to make sure that it doesn't, I think some of the things we're approaching here are a little tchotchke. So these are all just ordinances maybe to enhance the ability for somebody to be seen
Right.
as a business. One of the things that I noticed just in the signs that are out there now is the 30 seconds for each change it's like a standard or something? Or is it?
It's to prevent them from,
I understand what it's for, but is it?
Usually that's like a standard, industry standard about what it takes you to read one of those.
Because sometimes I'm sitting at the Park District one and I want to see the next one and I have to go.
White changes.
Well, they're under a time frame, so I think that's...
So to drive around the block and say, what was that?
Come back and see us.
That was me honking behind
And then
you.
it's on the same sign and I have to do it again.
Yeah, it's to prevent. I mean, it's kind of a trade-off, but usually 30 seconds is kind of a
Okay.
standard industry change time. But they can regulate it for a lot more. If you go quicker, then you're changing it a lot, and it could become a nuisance.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
Well, then, if there's no objections from the board, I would ask the staff would move forward on all 5 of these
Okay, thank you.
and take them to the public hearing for the zoning board of appeals, right?
Yes,
Okay.
we'll do the text amendment and take that to them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. And that is all.
Is it? Thank you, Chairman Camera. Next item on our committee meeting is under the Building Department. Chairman Martin.
Okay. Well. Building code update. We are tackling all our updates one section at a time, and Brian, would you like to take this over? All the new stuff is in red.
Thank you, Trustee Martin. The Building Department is requesting to update the Bartlett Building Code. When I started in the village many years ago, we were under the 81 Boca Code and the 79 Cable Code, which were about this size. And obviously our local amendments were like this, which really haven't changed much in size.
Valerie, can you scooch the mic up just a little bit for him?
Mike.
Scooch the mic a little closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. As I was moving.
Doing the show and tell with those. We're all sitting there wondering what he was doing with all of
got
that
props.
stuff, and now we see.
The Bartlett Building Code is laid out, obviously, for design professionals and for our residents from the beginning to the very end. It was a lot of time stake. TL, I'm surprised, isn't here because I'm sure she's the only one that's been here before through building code presentation. So probably in her, I can imagine why she did that. Keeping our codes up to date is really important for life safety and update of our technology that we are constantly changing through our code adoptions. Most important, the codes would enable the village to receive the full amount of federal funding if a catastrophic event were ever to occur, like a tornado or a flood, which hopefully we won't see for some time, or ever, for that matter. The codes are the international codes, International Council of Code Officials, and state codes and NFPA codes. Today, the codes are designed, obviously, to conserve energy in our buildings, protect our environment, and help our communities withstand the impact of natural disasters and, of course, climate change. With that in mind, our local amendments go beyond housekeeping, which is on page 2. We start talking about our local amendments being proposed. And the 6 that we are proposing are 2 which are less restrictive than the code, 3 are clarifications to the code, and 1 is specifically for our newly adopted disease or dead tree ordinance that was approved last month by the board. The new codes will bring the village up to the most current versions of the code, which is the 2012 set of codes. And if you look on the bottom of the ordinance, we start listing the codes. The International Building Code, which is this code right here. Then we go to the Illinois Energy Conservation Code, which is this code here. The next page is the International Residential Code, which primarily is what we use in our community because we're a bedroom community. The International Mechanical Code. The Plumbing Code, which is the 2004, is going to be amended this June. So it's been a long time waiting, so that's coming, the updated code. Next one is the National Electric Code, which is an NFPA code. The Illinois Accessibility Code. The International Property Maintenance Code. The International Fire Code. And the International Fuel Gas Code. It's a lot of codes, and the codes are very expensive. The codes are come out every 3 years, which brings me to our next topic, our local amendments. In 2009, the first local amendment is less restrictive, and I'm proposing limited area sprinklers, which is section 9.7.10.1 in our local amendments, in lieu of complete sprinkler systems. In 2009, the code changed to require all 1- and 2-family or residential homes to be suppressed or sprinkled. And unfortunately, in 2012, it's the same way. A lot of communities have not adopted the code because of that. But they got smart in 2012 because a lot of them were eliminating the sprinkler section out of the code, and they provided a limited area. And what I'm proposing is we do a limited area in our local amendments for the kitchen area, the laundry area, and the utility area. The state plumbing code allows 20 residential sprinkler heads that you can use off your domestic service without requiring an RPZ valve. That's very expensive yearly for the consumer that has a home. If the house is suppressed, the range is anywhere from $100 to $150 to have that annually tested if you had a sprinkler in your residential home. The limit area sprinklers, what I'm proposing, would cost somewhere less than $500 of the domestic service.
Let me just say, we spent a lot of time with the Fire Protection District going through this, looking at what their recommendations might be, and working through a compromise, and they helped us do this, that we think is a real benefit for our residents without the full sprinklers that we think is not only expensive but problematic from an implementation standpoint. Go ahead, Brad.
The next section is B on page 2, which is less restrictive. Again, this is for accessory structures. This is for basically if there was a structure that was located greater than 150 feet from our village water main, our current code would currently require accessory structure be suppressed or sprinkled. And we have a lot of fringe areas that we think that would benefit from this if we do not require them to be sprinkled. The next 3 are just basically clarifications. C is a clarification to our existing code, engineer's cost estimate. Our current code does not ask for this information, but it is always required on all of our new construction. So this far, just putting it in just basically clarifies what's required. D clarifies and makes siding and roof repairs more clear. Back in 2008, and it seems like every couple years we get hit with hail around here, and the roof and the siding takes a great impact on that. And we always battle with homeowners and their insurance companies on this, and this helps clarify it, what would be required from them. So this would benefit the residents a great deal. The next one is E on page 3, 942F and 91015, which clarifies the definition of homeowners that do work in their homes. Basically, this is a result from our VBR ordinance and from our house flippers, where we have a lot of them that say they're going to be living in the house and want to do the work, and in turn, they're just, selling the house quickly and not doing the proper repairs. They would have to basically sign an affidavit that they're going to be staying in the house for 6 months prior to selling it if they want to do the work. So then they can, went on their application. Let's see. The next one is F, which is Section 942H in Chapter 4 of our contractors. And now this is what I stated earlier. It coincides with our infected tree ordinance. We will now require tree contractors that work in our village to be licensed and insured. Most importantly, we will not require permits for tree removal, tree trimming, or tree treatment. Contractors that do the work for the homeowners will just be required to be licensed. Page 4 are minor housekeeping amendments that we changed with our to be consistent with the new ICC codes, the state of Illinois requirements, phase construction to keep projects moving along with our various departments' input and our residents' input. Stormwater requirements and our vacant building ordinance has been added to the back of the code, which will make the code somewhat a little larger than it is with that ordinance. Lastly, on page 5, our code changes, and a few that I will touch on that do not allow, obviously, for local amendments. One is the insulation shall comply with the Illinois Energy Code. Elevators would need to comply with the Office of State Fire Marshal. Radon is required from last June, passive radon system on all new construction. However, we've been requiring an ad in our code since 2007. FHA has required that for quite some time. Excuse me. And then last on page 6 are some other areas. Stormwater management plan is now required for all new construction in accordance with our stormwater ordinance. And then on 13, the energy code includes the requirements for blower door tests and infrared cameras that can detect where the leakage and occurs in your home. Every home has to pass the test before it can get an occupancy permit. But there are several steps and check balances that we have to do along the way from insulation on up in order for them to meet the criteria. Illinois has relaxed the air changes an hour from the International Energy Code, so that's good. And if the board has any other further questions or clarifications, I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions.
Got one or two here. If someone did come in, they wanted to flip a house, and they've been doing this for years, and regardless if they, it's minor things, so they don't need permits and everything, this is how we're going to stop them, or would they pay a higher
excuse me, you're referring to a homeowner that's coming in that's buying it, or just a general
buying
contractor?
It to flip it, they're not living there.
If a general contractor comes in, he would have to get licensed and insured in the village as a general contractor and pay liability and workers' insurance, basically.
But if a homeowner was there, he could say, no, I'm a homeowner, I don't need all that to...
Yeah, if the homeowner basically fills out an affidavit that he's planning on living in the house and he's going to be in there for 6 months at a minimum before he tries to sell it, then yes, absolutely, he can do that. We have a lot of homeowners that do work in town, but this is basically for the house flippers and the VBR ordinance that we register on a daily basis now.
Okay, so he does all the work within 2 months, goes to sell it. How do we go after him? Because now he fraudulently stated it was going to be there for 6.
The only thing I can tell you is that we would have something in our file, and there's home inspectors that come in daily and check the files for affidavits and things like that, and for what permits have been pulled. So,
when they fill out the building permit application, they'd have to tell us whether they're a homeowner and going to do the work. Some of these requirements are in the state statutes. And that's one of the trouble we're running into. Like, I think it's the state plumbing code requires that they have an affidavit, say they're going to live there for 6 months. But some other codes do not, but you can see the risk if somebody's doing electrical work. If you want to work on your house and you're good at it or bad at it, it's sort of your risk. But when they're sort of in the business...
By whose opinion?
Well, if, the problem is sometimes they're moving structural walls without... No, it happens seriously. That we get in fights with them and they want to do things without having architectural plans. And, and we have that battle. And they don't have insurance sometimes. It's one thing you're working in your house, you may be covered, but not your investment property. So we were running into some of that trouble, and if they're doing electrical work and doing it shoddily, it's a problem. And the state statute does require certain, they're trying to, now some of them go so far because they're protecting the electrical union or the plumbing union, and they go pretty far. We're not talking about that. We're looking for not screwing the bolts down on the toilet, and people are different levels of handiness. But when you're, doing the electrical work where you're working on the circuit box and that kind of thing, and now you're going to sell it to third parties and they don't have things in conduit and things, people have some expectation that it meets the code. So they're telling us when they apply, what their intention is. Now, things can change. That's why it's 6 months. I planned on living there, but...
So they're there for 3. Are we able to go back and, I guess the word would be fine them, or how...
If they lied?
Trustee Martin, we also are going back in there when they pull a permit to make sure it complies with codes. Our inspectors are doing their due diligence to make sure that the work they're doing is to code.
Okay.
So am I to understand that we are basically suggesting that we don't want people to flip houses in Bartlett?
Oh, no, we have a lot of,
Absolutely not.
a lot of people love our community because we work pretty well with all the contractors and...
Well, that's
and
what I would
house
think.
workers.
I would think that
They don't
if-
get the one status to being a homeowner.
I would think that if we had the opportunity to, with the vacant homes in Bartlett, someone said, for instance, I said, all right, I really see this vacant house on such and such a street. I'd like to buy that house, and I have some time, and I'd like to spend some time doing that repair work myself. I live here in town. I want to work on something, and I want to invest time in bettering that property.
You would have to...
It seems that now I'm going to have to be penalized for that. I'm going to have, because I can't live in town and have 2 places.
No, you would have to just get a contractor's license, that's all. General contractor's license.
And
is all
what
you'd
does
have
that
to get.
cost?
Well, you'd have to get liability insurance through your insurance agents, general contractor's liability insurance.
So it'd be a license and general insurance as well to work on a property that you were trying to flip.
Correct.
And that's for doing significant work on it.
That's if you're doing significant work on it, correct.
It seems to me that this ordinance change is kind of painting this very broad with any construction, demolition, rehabilitation, alteration, that's a big word there, remodeling and repair work without a builder's contractor's license. It just seems to me if somebody wants to buy a house, come in and paint some walls,
We don't require painting.
or let's just say something simple. I mean, they want to come in and change a toilet, or they want to put in maybe some cabinets. I don't see why they shouldn't be able to do that.
And most of them do. We don't, again, for those type of items there, that's not a significant requirement. We're going to see that being done when they want to improve the home to sell it before we even get in there. So that's not an issue.
And here again, I don't want to say that there aren't people that do shoddy work. I'm sure there are. People buy a house and don't know what they're doing, go into it. But I would say that probably I'd like to think of it more on the positive side, that most people who do this probably have a desire to make it and do it right. I would certainly think. And then at the end of the day, when they do sell the house, you got the home inspectors that are looking at things as well. Now, if it's something's hidden, conduit, pipes, and plumbing, I understand they're not going to be able to see that in detail, but most things they're trained to look at, and I think they would be giving the homeowner a pretty good idea of the repair works that have been done.
Correct. We basically are going into the homes and making sure they comply with code. You're correct, there's a lot of work that gets done by the contractor that's doing the work in order to sell the home. I mean, it's their advantage to make the home presentable in order for them to make a dollar and a profit on their investment, absolutely. And it's good for the village. I mean, it's good. We want the home back. It improves the neighborhood,
Sure.
and it's a win-win for us.
I'm missing what you're suggesting.
Well, I'm a little...
Suggesting that we eliminate this E paragraph? Or-
No, I'm suggesting that I just have some issues with, it seems to limit a person's ability to actually invest in Bartlett. It's another obstacle to overcome.
Okay, what would you suggest that we ask staff to do then?
Well,
That's what I'm missing.
I'm not so certain that I would suggest the homeowner occupant exemption change here. Personally, I don't know that I'm in favor of it.
Let's see if I can.
So anybody can come in and do anything to any house without oversight from the village?
Within reason, I think that if you decide you want to buy a piece of property and fix it up, I don't know why you have to now become a general contractor, pay the fees, and do all the other things that you're going to be hiring people to do. More than likely, just take the positive approach that more than likely you're going to hire a plumber to do your plumbing work, you're going to hire an electrician to do your electrician work, but the other little ancillary things you're going to do yourself.
Those plumbers and electricians would then have a contractor's license, is that correct?
That would solve it.
Does that answer your question, sir?
That will solve it.
So the replacement of appliances, cabinetry, I can do that myself. I don't need
Correct.
Right. But when you're dealing with certain things, the state statute requires,
I'm not sure I want my neighbor, no offense, my neighbor, the real estate professional, to be rewiring
Right.
the house
We're talking.
20 because he wants to save a few dollars on his flip. I think there is some reasonable regulation, as evidenced by the 14 inches of federal and state codes there that are required to some of these things. I don't know that we have a huge flipping
Kind of protecting-
issue in town. I
Yes.
know we have some flippers that come into town. Certainly, we want to encourage them to do that with
The ones that we
with the
have
vacant property.
very
And I don't want to
professional.
discourage a neighbor from buying a vacant next door to them and fixing that up. But
We have that. We have that.
Exactly. And I think if I understand what Brian's telling us, is that we're just requiring that some of those repairs be done by a professional. Is that kind of what this comes down to?
Correct. We sort of weeded out the ones that are not very responsible flippers, and the ones that we have done a great job in town, and we work with them all the time.
So again, my hypothetical here, I live at 101 Spruce Street and 103 becomes vacant. I can buy 103 and do a kind of a traditional flip, but unless I want to license myself as a contractor, some of that work is going to be done by a professional contractor. Is
I
that what
think
you're
you would
saying?
want that just for your own liability if you're selling the home to somebody else.
Okay. Unless if it's a quick paint job,
You can do
then
that.
clearly that's within staff's discretion. You're not going to be chasing me down for a contractor's license because I painted the house and then sold it.
We don't require painting to get permits anyway.
Okay.
On D, question, have we ever had problems with the insurance companies? It says siding
Yes.
or roofing, and
Yes, we have.
Okay, well, because, knock on wood, we've never been hit by hail in our house. And I'm thinking that this is only going to help our residents when they point back and say, hey, it's the statue. You have to redo that whole side, and then it doesn't look patchy either.
Yes, we actually have amended our code and actually made it less stringent because I was interpreting it differently, and where I was requiring the entire roof to be replaced. And so
We were
basically,
threatened.
this clarifies the damage that can be, that occurs on a home now, and that what would be required to be replaced. And it would only if it's on one side of a gable end roof, if the insurance company wants to would only require one side, at least one side would match and not a patch job.
Patching.
We were threatened by at least 2 different insurance companies suing us when we were saying they had to replace the whole roof or all the siding on the home. And those were resolved by making them, place the siding on a side. So this is really a codification of how we resolved that issue with the insurance companies. They were threatening a class action and all kinds of good stuff. And so it's a good compromise. I believe the owners sometimes want everything replaced, and then they bog down the insurance company fighting with the owners. This gives us more leverage and strength over those contractors and the insurance companies. And it's appealing then, and there's not this mismatch if you do a whole side or a gable, if you will, so that you don't see the seams where there's the transition or the change.
I did have one, what I hope is a very brief question, comment regarding the sprinklers. First of all, Madam Administrator, thank you for clarifying that you worked with the fire district on that. I know personally Chief Agola, some of the other chiefs take sprinklers very, very seriously, so I'm glad you did clarify that you worked with them diligently on all of this. And again, just to clarify, this is not retroactive.
Correct.
So the residents in Bartlett who don't currently have sprinklers in their house are now not going to be forced to go and spend whatever it might cost them to put sprinklers into the utility rooms, more than 100 square feet, the kitchen area, the laundry room, et cetera. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this is only for new construction going forward. Now, certainly, as a building professional and someone who works with the fire department, you would encourage people to use their tax refunds to sprinkle their house, but they're not required to do that.
If a builder wants to come in and do a subdivision and wants to suppress or sprinkle it, we would not object to it.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
All right. And again, nor would we stop anybody in the village who wants to put sprinklers in their house from doing that.
Correct.
With the proper building codes.
We have
building
some
permits.
homes that have sprinkler systems in them.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure that we weren't, someone might somehow read into this that now every home in Bartlett has to have at least so many sprinklers. And we're not saying that. Is that correct?
As soon
All
as we
right.
get our contractor's license.
I think that's all I had on that.
I wanted to talk about Section 921, permit required, which is on page 6 of the amendments. The second paragraph reads, "A building permit shall be required for tree removal, tree trimming, and/or any chemical treatment application to any trees." So we're going to require...
921, that's in the actual building code itself?
Right.
Okay, yes, that was a mistake, and I have the amendment that took that out, and that's why I clarified it when I said under contractors that we will not require a building permit for tree removal, tree trimming, and/or chemical treatment. That section is gone.
Okay, but we still have this. I mean, I guess my
This is just
question is,
at
that
the
was with regards to
committee,
contractors. Is this regards to homeowners? Because as I read this, it sounds like homeowners are going to be required to get a permit.
No.
They are not.
Okay.
They are not.
Good.
I just
We're
want to
fixing
make that.
Good.
In fact, had the change here, but thought rather than confuse things, we'd call it out in the ordinance
Still confused.
when we bring it to the board. So,
Okay.
good catch. Darn it.
Nicely done, Trustee.
Any other questions?
Thanks.
Just real quick, if somebody remodels their kitchen, like completely, sprinkler, no sprinkler?
No sprinklers.
Okay. It's all just totally new construction,
Correct.
but you'd highly advise it.
I mean, that's why we decided those areas. When you look at where the fires occur in a home, it's usually the kitchen area.
I think that's a pretty good workaround that you had there as far as, I don't think there's too many builders that would be too happy if they came in and saw a $4,500 extra house, but if you're hitting the high points, I think that's a pretty good workaround.
Brian, you said how many sprinklers do you get without having that valve in your house now?
The
20.
plumbing code allows up to 20 heads.
It just occurred to me, this has no potential to affect the outside sprinkler systems in some way, does it?
No, it does
so
not.
that you say, okay, I'm only going to put up 20 outside sprinklers, and so you don't need a valve on the outside of your house.
You do require an RPZ for your lawn irrigation systems.
Right, I know that, yeah. But doesn't matter how many sprinkler heads are out
No.
in your yard, okay.
Or you can just get a teenager.
Would you say it would be dirt party?
I think teenagers only work seasonally.
They don't have to be inspected, but they do cost more than $150 a year.
And where are we going with this, Brian?
Hopefully on to village board for approval.
Would that be next time, or? Yes, it would. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chairman Martin. I believe that's all we have this evening for the good of the order. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Trustee Chipman, seconded by Trustee Martin. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Camera,
Yes.
Carbonaro,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ranky, Shipman.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Go Hawks.